Hi everyone, so I'm super excited to be here today with someone that I've actually connected with online, and we had such a nice chat that I thought it would be really interesting to kind of share it with all of you. So I would like to introduce to you Chelsea Hester-Bradt, who is a mental health professional and an expert in disordered eating and body image, and on top of that she's also a former dancer. So I really wanted to have a chat with her today because obviously body image and dancing is something that I'm really passionate about. And also I feel it's something that we don't really know enough about. So hopefully that's going to change today. So hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Kristina.
So first of all, I would like to kind of hear, like, what is your story and how did you start doing the work that you do, and what is it that you do?
Yeah. As I'm sure with many people, it's like a windy story. Like it's very, unlikely that I think we just like decide we want to be what we are and then we become it. And for me, so I grew up a dancer and did musical theater, went to a performing arts high school, didn't major in dance in college, but I performed throughout college. I was in a modern dance company. So dance has always been a big part of my life. So has my interest in psychology. I was a child and family development major in undergrad, and then got my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. And that's when I kind of really started fine-tuning my interest and my specialty and deciding, what do I want to do a bunch of research in and learn about and work with. And so that's when I kind of went the eating disordered eating path. But my interest in disordered eating, I can trace that back even to high school, doing a big research project on like dance and eating disorders, the prevalence of eating disorders in dance. And so I've always been interested in the intersection of the two. And I have my own healing journey with body image and food things, like being a dancer and the impacts. I have felt those impacts directly and then have had to do my own healing. And then I did get back in the grad school time period of my life. It wasn't connected to grad school, but in that same time period, I performed professionally and got back into musical theater and dance, and really was able to, I was living the dream, honestly. I was a therapist. In my like little bio in the program, it said like therapist by day, performer by night. And like that really was like the perfect little life for a short bit. And now I moved states, and now where I am now, I have my own coaching business where I work with disordered eating and body image.
Yeah. So obviously you were a dancer yourself. So is that why you said you had kind of experiences with kind of body image and dancing or disordered eating. So is that why you're so passionate about working with dancers, like in particular, or?
Yes, absolutely. Dancers and performers. And and we could extend that out too, but just dancers and performers were so much of their career and their like livelihood. Like there is a strong connection to their appearance, whether that, not saying that is right, but that is the nature of the business. And so how do we work with people who are faced daily, are faced with challenges daily of people telling them how they should look, how they should eat. I think that dancers have a really unique challenge in overcoming disordered eating. It's just like a whole different world, a whole different ballpark.
Yeah. So I think something that is kind of really important, like to just kind of educate everyone, and I'm sure you can explain it much better than me. So can you explain kind of what is the difference between disordered eating and eating disorders?
Yeah, for sure. I think like where I like to start is looking at the absence of either. So what would be like, more normal, not disordered eating? What would be non-disordered eating? And I believe that is what we see in children. Like I believe that is how we are born, where there's an innate connection to our body. There's an innate connection to our hunger and fullness cues. We recognize we have an urge to eat. We eat. When we feel satisfied and full, we stop eating. We don't have all these rules and shoulds about what's allowed, and I can only have so much, and I can't eat past a certain time in the day. And those rules and shoulds that we learn throughout life, I think that that is what, in my eyes, is disordered eating. When we are living not in alignment with like what our body is telling us, and there becomes this disconnect from our body, and we begin just listening to like the outside world that's telling us when to eat, what to eat, how much. So I think like if I could, I don't know what I would change the title to, but I would like to come up with a different label than disordered eating, because I think people think, oh, that means there's like something really wrong with me. But really, like, disordered eating is kind of what's become normalized, where we're, you know, tracking our calories burned, we're calculating our food, we're calculating everything. And I think the absence of that, where it's this more intuitive, listening to your body, honoring your body's needs, your need for sleep, your need for water, your need for nutrients, your need for calories, that is the absence of disordered eating in my eyes. And then we have clinical eating disorders, which those are gonna meet a criteria for a clinical mental health diagnosis. Eating disorders are very serious. Not many people know. I don't think that eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental health condition. They are very serious, and they're, you know, someone's going to have to meet certain criteria to meet an eating disorder. And yeah, so I think disordered eating is more like it's more normalized. Like, disordered eating is among us. I'd say it's very common, especially in dancers. I mean, I'd say it's going to be hard to find someone who's not operating from a place of disordered eating in the dance world.
Yeah, it sounds, if you're kind of saying it's like a disconnect from your own body, that sounds like I think most people I know is suffering from some kind of disordered eating. But I guess it's a bit of a scale as well, you know, like where you, or a spectrum. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you, if you feel that you're kind of like disconnected from listening to your own body, which I feel we probably most of us are, how do you kind of connect back to that?
Yeah. One, I would say it's going to be a journey. Like, if you're watching this or anyone listening to this and you're like, that's me, I want to take that step. I think recognizing like it's a journey and it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Think about, you know, let's assume people are, you know, at least 20 years old watching this. That's 20 years of your life. You have been operating in a certain mode where we have all of these messages we've been taught, especially from, you know, parents, teachers, dance teachers. And I never want to put like blame and shame on those people, because they're operating in the same system that we are, where they taught the same things we are. And so things just get passed down. But when you think about, for 20 to 30 years, you have been like programmed to think about your body and think about food in a certain way. And then all of a sudden you want to start switching things up. I think one of the most important things is for people to understand, like, this is an undertaking. It's not just like you flip a switch. It's a healing journey. I'm thinking of it as a journey. And so, I mean, you know, seeking help and support would be my number one advice. Like, not necessarily with me, not trying to put in a plug, but with you, with anyone who you can have that accountability. You have someone who is an expert in this area, in mindset work, in working with your thoughts and your beliefs. And so getting support, I would say, is one of the first things. Recognizing that it's a journey that you're going to undertake, and then slowly beginning to, you know, challenge long-held beliefs. I was trained in mindfulness. The program that I went through, my graduate program, was a mindfulness-based counseling psychology program. So with my work with clients, we do a lot of returning to our body, returning to our breath, beginning to notice the subtle, you know, subtle shifts in your body, beginning to notice your emotions, your needs, and that's going to help you notice your hunger cues. Like, so bringing attention and awareness back into the body is also one of the first things. Like, if we were working together, that's one of the ways we would start. We would start with looking at some of your core beliefs about your body and food, and then we would start with actually like rebuilding that relationship and getting in touch with your body.
Yeah, I think obviously this is really nice, and like, for example, for me that would be a really nice kind of work to do. But the problem, I guess, is if you're working with dancers, is that if they just follow what their body needs, that might not be achieving kind of the look that they need for dancing. So how do you kind of see like this kind of eating disorders or disordered eating within dancing?
Yeah. And I mean, that brings up like a point we have to talk about, is that like, yeah, dancers are operating in a system. It's not just, there is a system, there is a culture. There is a culture that has been established throughout history of what dancers are supposed to look like, what dancers, I mean, how much they're supposed to weigh, and so much that is appearance related. So I think we have to work on both, and I'm very passionate about working with the system as well. And again, this isn't going to change overnight, but how can we start challenging and some of those long held stories and ideas about what a dancer is supposed to look like? Like, can we shift that? And I mean, the answer is yes, we can always shift our ideas. We can always shift our beliefs. Like, we see that happening throughout time. We see, you know, dancers are breaking, like, people are coming out being like, look, I'm the first Black ballet dancer. Look, I'm the first plus sized ballet dancer. Like, these things are happening, but we have to, I mean, it's going to take time working with the system. So I would work with a client on an individual level. And then I would also think that there's like this advocacy piece that's going to be really important in working with dance teachers and working with dance companies and recognizing and doing some education around the harm of forcing someone to be a certain size, of like recognizing that that can easily feed into a clinical eating disorder. And we really need to be mindful, I think, working from both ends.
Okay. So your goal is kind of to change the culture in dancing so that dancers could be healthy, and that would be kind of accepted to just be a healthy weight, or
yeah. Crazy, right? Dancers could be healthy. Yeah. And I think that, you know, many people, just like outsiders, might not realize that these athletic dancers, many are not healthy. You know, many are so underweight that they are having, you know, real health implications. There are real health implications that many people don't know. And, you know, people just come to the ballet and they're like, oh, it's so beautiful, and their bodies are so graceful and agile. But they don't, you know, many people don't recognize like the suffering that is happening in the personal lives of many of those dancers, and the toll that takes on them day after day of restricting and weighing themselves and being held up to the standard of, if you gain a pound, you are out, you know, you're cut, we replace you. Like, what does that do to the psyche? What does that do to the sense of self? And so how do we allow more grace? Like, this dancer needs to be healthy. Like, if we're taking her blood work, if we're, you know, looking at her pulse, like, this dancer needs to be healthy for the longevity of her life, his life, for the, you know, the company's health as a whole. Like, yeah.
But obviously that's, I think that's very important work to do, and obviously more long-term work. But what if I'm a dancer now and I just want to have a job and I want to win? Then how do you kind of manage that to kind of stay the size that you need to be to dance, but also at the same time not destroy yourself completely, both mentally and physically? Like, is there some kind of balance or some way where you can do that, or how do you solve that?
I think that would be, I think, could that be possible? Possible. Is it possible? Sure. I think there would need to be some real honest conversations, I think, happening like among me or the client or the provider and the client, of like, what are your values? You know, what ultimately, like, you know, if being this star dancer is the dream, that is the highest value in your life. And for you, sacrificing your health, sacrificing like the potential long-term effects of restricting, like, you know, we got to look at those values. And I think it would be that those are conversations that need to be had, like, with dancers, of like, and what if there is a way to have both? Is there a way to have a conversation with your director? Like, does it have to be so black and white? I don't think so. Can we have conversations with the directors about like, hey, my health is suffering. Like, hey, my mental health, like, here's what's happening when I leave dance every day. Like this is the obsessing that I'm doing around food. This is what's happening. Can we have a conversation about that with talking to the dance teacher, talking to the director, and then also being open to other dance companies, like knowing that there are more and more every day, there are more and more dance companies that recognize body diversity as a thing, that recognize the harm of eating disorders. And so, you know, that would be a conversation of like, are you open to exploring other studios, other dance companies? And again, that's going to come down to a person's personal choice of like, no, this is the company that I have my heart set on. And so then we have to just like look at the real consequences. Like, are you willing to, you know, work with the consequences of that institution, and then hope that there are people coming in and working from the institutional level. Yeah. You know, there's so many pieces to it.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, and that's a challenge that I'm like dealing with clients, is also because most of the people that I have are like ballroom dancers, so they do competitions. And the fact is, if you're not in dancing shape, I won't even say in shape, because you can be in shape and still not be in dancing shape. But if you're not in the shape and have that look of that dancer, you just don't get the results. So it's kind of that simple. So do you want the results or not? And then how do you get to that point, but at the same time stay somewhat sane and don't destroy your health for the rest of your life? You know, it's very tricky.
Absolutely. And I think, like, you know, you'll find people in the like health dietitian world. You know, you can find some dietitians that will say, I can put you on a diet and keep you healthy. I don't believe that. You know, when it comes to depriving our body of food that it needs, and when we are restricting our body of food that it needs, like, I just don't believe that that can be done in a sustainable way without really affecting, like, we're not just looking at like the biological level, but we're looking at the psychological level of what does that do when we know we're only allowed X amount of calories a day? What kind of obsessive thoughts does that create? How, when we are allowed to eat, you know, maybe the competition's over, right? Like, you just had a big competition, you don't have another one for a few months. Then what do you do with food? Chances are you rebound. You know, many people rebound. They've been depriving of themselves of something for months leading up to this competition, and then they swing into the other direction of rebounding, and then that doesn't feel good. And so do we want to be on this like push and pull where, you know, you have an audition coming up, and so you're dieting and you're restricting, and then you don't have that audition or you don't have that competition, and then it creates this push and pull. That is what I would call disordered relationship with food. And I believe, like, the only way out of that is to really get back into connection with your body and listening to what your body needs. And you know, you can't promise that your body's going to look a certain way. Like, when we're listening to our bodies, like, our bodies are going to, you know, they're going to be their healthiest version of themselves. And like, when we start trying to control that weight, that's when it can, when we start saying like, well, I'll allow this food, but only if my body, you know, my body still has to look this exact certain way, that gets back into that controlling place. And it is, so part of the work that I would do and would do with dancers is like, there's some grief here. Like, there's some, you know, if a dancer decides, which many will not, but if a dancer decides, I want to get off this train, I want to get off this train of starving myself and hating my body and forcing myself into these dance costumes and this dance ideal, there is some grief, big grief, of grieving this dream and recognizing this very hard decision that, like, I might have to choose. Might, right? Not ever, you know, might. My dream is that people don't have to choose. We don't want people to have to choose between living out their passion and their love for dance and being healthy and respecting their body. That's a really cruel choice we're forcing professional dancers to make.
I think also, I think for me, like from my own experience and also talking to other dancers, I think the problem also becomes, so one thing is the disordered eating, which I think is there to some extent for most people, but especially for dancers. And then we have this whole idea of like body image where, I don't know, I feel that your whole value somehow gets placed on the way you look. And that's something that for me, like myself, I've dealt with a lot after I stopped dancing. Like I was like thinking, well, everything is about the way I look, and people only like me because of, like, I don't know, it's like a dancer thing. I think that you kind
Absolutely.
of think, well, if I'm skinny enough, then everyone will love me or something, you know, like it's a very odd thing that you think, oh, someone could appreciate me for something else than just the way I look. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of have a more healthy body image, but still obviously keep to some of the standards that are required within dancing. That's also, I think, a challenge for a lot of dancers.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. That, I mean, you said it perfectly, that there is this like equivocating your value with your body and your worth with your body. Like your body, I mean, it is, you're in the dance world, your body is what gets you a job. It's not your interview, like a normal job where it's your personality or your intellect and your knowledge of the company. No, it's your body. It's the way that it moves and the way that it looks. And so, yeah, how do we like diffuse, like how do we separate your self-worth and like who I am as a person with, yes, my body is what's like getting me the job. And again, that's why having like a sports psychologist or having some sort of a mental coach, someone who can help you sift through all of those things and like, okay, yes, I need to look this way for this competition, and this person is commenting on my weight, or this person is commenting on my food choices. How do I separate that from my personhood? How do I separate that from my worth as a human? And I think a big part of that is like helping dancers find their identity outside of dance and finding, you know, really getting connected to like who they are as a person, that they do bring more to the table than just their body and, you know, their ability to perform, even though that is such a key ingredient in their success.
Yeah. And I think it's difficult when all your life you've been judged on only one part of your being, and then suddenly you kind of like, you realize that there are other parts that could be important because you've only been measured on one thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do we, so obviously it's all nice to like, if you're a dancer and you think, okay, I want to be more, have better body image, or maybe you're a teacher or whatever in the dance world, but obviously you're up against a whole big system. So how can we like, how do we kind of promote a more positive, like kind of body positive space within dancing, or how do we start by doing that work? What do you kind of, how do you see that happening?
Yeah. I mean, I think for, you know, so I think first, whoever is doing the advocating needs to decide, am I going to like work with the individual or am I going to work on the system? And you can do both. Like I hope to do both. Like I go in and I talk to dance studios. Like that is something that I do, and talk to dance studio owners about like ways we can shift, even just shifting our language, the way we talk about bodies, the way we are demonizing certain foods versus glorifying certain foods. We put so many things in these like all or nothing, black or white categories of pathologizing certain body sizes, or even just like certain body parts, like this specific body part has to look a certain way. It's not even like the whole body as a whole. So, you know, I think that there's a lot that can be done with the dance teachers around language that's used. What are we even talking about? Like, what are we bringing focus to? And how often are we bringing focus to a person's weight and their size, or are we correcting more their form and their technique? Like, how often are we talking about their size versus their technique? And I think one thing I would really want to say is like studios and companies need to be talking about body image. Like we can't, and they need to be talking about eating disorders. Like we can't pretend it doesn't exist. Yeah. So that is something I would highly encourage studios and companies is, you know, at the beginning of every season, sit down, have a workshop. Have a workshop. Each year we have a workshop. We look at risk factors, how to spot an eating disorder, because many dancers don't know. You know, I went through dance and I had no idea that what I was doing was not normal. because everyone around you is doing it. We're all doing it together. So, you know, I think that bringing awareness from both ends, like as a company, like we're all in this together, kind of like we need to do more educating. The company either hire someone to come in and do some educating, or if the dance teachers, company owners, studio instructors, if they are aware and they can talk about it, then that needs to be something that is an open conversation. Because once you name it and once you bring that topic into your studio, then, you know, dancers, one, they have the awareness of this is a thing, but two, it opens the door for conversation of like, hey, I'm struggling. Hey, remember that like workshop you led a year ago about eating disorders? I think I might be like, I recognize some of those symptoms within myself, right? So it opens up that conversation. Rather, I think right now, a lot of people are like, I'm just going to pretend this doesn't exist. Because it feels overwhelming. What do you do? It is so much in the culture. It's like, yeah, pretty much everyone in our studio probably has disordered eating or is on the verge of an eating disorder. So like, what do we even do with that? We're just going to pretend like it's not there because it feels overwhelming and I'm not sure how to talk about it. But we have to start talking about it, I think, is one of the biggest things. Yeah.
What if you're, because I get this quite often from teachers. So say you're a dance teacher and you have a dancer that you think could get better results or be a better dancer if they lost weight, but they don't know how to approach it. Would you suggest that they don't talk about it, or is there a way that you can approach it in a way that's not going to be damaging? Or
I think first I would ask the teacher of just, you know, what I would get curious. I like to challenge. I just like to challenge. I would get curious about, what do you think losing weight, tell me specifically how you think weight loss is going to improve her technique. Like really break it down for me.
I don't think it will improve their technique, but like, so for example, in our style of dancing, I don't think losing weight has any impact on your technique really, but it has an impact on the way you look. And because you're in a competition with someone else, if you don't look the same as everyone else, you will have worse results. So these are kind of, I guess, facts, you know, whether that's right or wrong, you know, it's a kind of a different discussion. But if you are overweight as a dancer, as overweight compared to everyone else on the floor, let's say, then you might get worse results. So just from the aesthetics, it's nothing to do with the way you dance or the technique.
I see. By results, you meant like score.
Yeah, but so they get marked. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I thought you meant results like technique, but you mean like, in competition, their actual results. And so, okay. So we're working with this. There is a fact. The fact of the matter is that in the ballroom dance world, smaller bodies get higher scores. Is that what you would say? Not necessarily like that, but obviously if you're bigger than everyone else, it would be a factor. I would think,
Yeah, and I mean, even this, like, I would love to, I think it's worth like exploring, like how true is it? Like, I'm sure that there is a lot of truth to that. And I think it might be important for studio owners to like, are there any, what's the word I'm looking for? Examples of someone in a larger, you know, whatever a larger body for a dancer is, right? It's all subjective, but are there any examples of a larger dancer being successful? Like, one, is it even possible?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying I don't think there are examples of it. Not in the top.
Okay, that's, no. That's like a genuine question for me of like, not knowing the ballroom dance world, of genuine curiosity of like, have there been examples of someone who has, you know, kind of challenged that and proven like, look, I'm a very skilled dancer and I'm in a larger body. But so historically there's not. So then, okay, so we're working with this truth, this reality. As a dance teacher, you're working with this reality of like, if you want higher scores, better results, if you want better results, you need to have a smaller body. So I think that is going to come, right? So like, again, how much does the dancer value those results? and putting it as a choice to the dancer. So here's the deal. Here's the reality of the field that you're in.
Yeah.
If you want to improve in your results, your body's going to need to be smaller.
Yeah.
And here are the ways that we can make your body smaller. Here are the consequences of going down that route. And we got to be really real about, like, here are the health implications. Here are the ways that it could affect, you know, here are the psychological implications, the toll that it could take. Do you want to go down that route?
Yeah.
Like you can, and it might get you a higher score.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that I find so challenging as well sometimes, because I know that that is a reality, but then standing there with a dancer who is not overweight, like when you look at, you know, like health and normal kind of body mass and all this, they're not overweight, they're just normal size.
Yeah.
But you know that if they were smaller, they might get better results. Do you say that to them? And how, you know, it's a very tricky situation. And I had a teacher actually that I think said it very well to me when I was dancing, and they were kind of like, you look great. Like as a person, you look great, but you're next to someone who looks like they're 12 years old. If you want to win, well, that's what you have to do. And then you kind of, you know, but it's harsh, but it's obviously reality. So, and
it's reality.
It was said, I kind of was like, well, okay, that's fair, you know, and it's kind of also from a point that there's kind of nothing wrong with you.
Yeah. Right. Yes. And I think that is, okay, so a few things you just said I think are great and gave me ideas. So one, I would get curious from the dance instructor company owner. One, has this particular dancer, this hypothetical example, has this dancer come to you saying, I want better results? What can I do? What can I do? Or is it you as the instructor that want those better results for them?
Yeah.
Are you wanting to push them? Do you see a greatness inside of them that, you know, that you imagine, wow, you could be so much better, and I think you're going to have to be smaller or lose weight to do that? Because then we're pushing like our agenda onto them, and we're pushing, you know, so that would be the first thing. Did they come to you and say, hey, this is my dream. My dream is to be successful. How do I get there? And then that's when we have the real honest conversation of like, hey, I need to be really real with you. The path to getting there, because of the system that has been created, is that your body, you know, needs to look different. Yeah. And here are the real consequences of that action. You know, here are the real consequences of going down that path. And we need to be honest about that so that we are giving dancers a fair choice. Because I think so many people are like, yes, sign me up. Yeah. I'll diet. Sign me up. I'll stop eating. Like, yes, whatever I have to do to be successful. And they do not know the cost.
Yeah.
They don't know.
The challenge is also, one thing is when you're dealing with adults, but quite often you'll be dealing with teenagers or almost children. And, you know, how do you really, it's a very tricky situation to be in.
Yeah, when you're working with a teenager, saying, you know, the patterns and the way of thinking and the way that in order to get to contort your body and control your body in a way that is not necessarily natural, you're going to be like programming yourself that could have lifelong implications. Like it really could affect things for the long time, health-wise and just psychologically. Like you're going to have to, at some point, you're going to probably have to see a therapist. Like I think, you know, if dance teachers were telling their 15-year-old students, like, hey, just so you know, in 20 years.
When you stop dancing, go and see.
What'd you say?
Yeah, so go and see someone one day in 20 years when you stop dancing, and for now, just focus on being skinny. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I think also circling back to what you said of like, as a dance teacher, what can we say if someone's in this predicament? I think really placing the blame and responsibility on the system as much as you can, on the culture. So even if you are, when you're having that conversation with a dancer and saying, assuming the dancer has come to you saying, it is my dream to be successful, what do I need to do to get there? And you're saying, I really think maybe the only thing holding you back is your size. Immediately, we need to say, this is not about you.
Yeah.
You are not broken. This is not, you have done nothing wrong. this is not something that you have not taken any missteps. This is the culture and this is the system that exists. And even if you as a dance teacher, if this were true for you, saying like, I don't agree with it, like I don't support it, if that was true. And I think that is huge, of like making sure the dancer knows that they did not, they are not broken, that they are not a failure, that they haven't done anything wrong, and then giving them the real honest choice of like, do you want to, go down the route of controlling and manipulating your weight, and like, here's what that entails, and here's like studies that show what that can do to your body, and really just trying, like, as a dance teacher, keeping the hope and the faith alive that there are, if not right this moment, but in the future, like there are going to be opportunities for dancers with more body diversity. Like, I just have to hold that hope, even if it's not real right now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I have that hope too. But so I know when I work with my clients, obviously body image is something that comes up really often, and for me it is really kind of heartbreaking, especially when you look at some of these girls that are just stunning and beautiful and perfect bodies, and then they have these issues. But do you have any tips if there are dancers out there that are kind of watching this and they're struggling with their body image? Like, what can they do?
Like, maybe could you ask, like, just a little more specific? Like, you mean like at home, or like how to work with their thoughts, or like in the dance studio, or what? Yeah,
I'm thinking kind of, how do they start becoming more positive about their own bodies? I'm probably more thinking in the sense of how they think about themselves.
Yeah, I mean, self-compassion, I know that that's like it's kind of becoming like a cliche or like mainstream term, self-compassion, but I definitely think, like, if we were to look at the minds of dancers, they tend to be highly critical. Like, our inner critic is just always on. Like, that's part of what makes a dancer successful, is because they are able to take correction. They're able to look in the mirror and be like, wow, okay, I need to fix that. Like, our critical brains tend to be like really present. And so being really mindful of making sure that there are other voices coming into your life besides the inner critic. Like, where is the compassionate voice? Where is the voice that says you're doing enough? You're perfect as you are. Where is the voice? And so I think, like, that's going to have to be intentional for a dancer, because we are just like, we're surrounded by judgment. We're surrounded by actual judges. We're surrounded by judgmental thoughts. And so we have to counter that very intentionally with those positive self messages towards ourselves of like, I mean, it could be something as simple as like waking up and writing down in your journal a few things that you're proud of, or writing down some things that you really admire about yourself. It could be starting to intentionally pay attention to the qualities of your personality, and again, like, kind of developing that identity outside of just your body, tapping into your values and your spirit. And but I think, like, it can be as simple, it's not necessarily easy, but like, it can be as simple as starting to feed ourselves different messages than just beating ourselves up all day, every day.
Yeah. I think that is so important, because I think dancers are really critical of themselves in general, and and of course the teachers are critical, because that's kind of, I guess, their job to find faults, and like you said, yeah, obviously the judges their job is to judge. So yeah, it's very tricky. So yeah, that's a good advice, to try and counter those kind of judgments or critical voices that are out.
And find other people who can offer those messages to you. Like, really be intentional about whether it's finding someone in your dance studio, a peer that y'all can be each other's like support, or finding, someone like you that maybe you're paying a professional to be that voice that says, I see you, I hear you, that can validate you and support you and cheer you on. I think that dancers are often motivated by shame, which shame is not like a great motivator. But like that's often what's like under our butts, like making us do better, is like this fear of it's very a fear driven, trying to achieve, like fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. And so what if we can have other people in our lives that are encouraging us via love? Like, what if the motivation for growth and the motivation for becoming better was someone genuinely encouraging us?
Yeah.
And saying, I see you, you have so much potential, oh my gosh, you know, and coming from that place of encouragement rather than criticism. Surround yourself, find those people. And I know these things, everything I've said today is not easy. You know, this is like a 1 hour conversation, 45-minute conversation. Like I'm throwing stuff out there, but one of the first things I said is that it's a journey and a process.
Yeah.
None of this stuff is easy. None of this happens overnight. My heart goes out to dancers who are faced with this choice of like, do I want to maintain my sanity or do I want to have like my dream career?
Yeah, and I think you're so right. Obviously, it is a journey, and obviously, I think it's been really great, like talking about it today. And I think one of the ways of changing the views within like the system is really just to have conversations about it. So I think that's a good start. And I'm sure a lot of dancers have found it really helpful. But like you said, it's a journey. So if someone would like to kind of get in contact with you or connect with you or see more about what you do, I know you're on social media and stuff. How do they connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram is _Chelsea Hester _, and then my website is chelseahester.com. There's tons of information. I have a blog, I have lots of stuff, and then you can get on my email list or just reach out to me directly. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to work together, it's pretty clear on my website of how you apply and stuff, but otherwise you can just get on my email list or reach out to me on Instagram. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, thank you, Kristina.